Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese is set to formally meet with US President Donald Trump for the first time next week. It comes as a survey reveals nearly half of Australians think an alliance with the US is needed more than ever. Well, Jared Monshine is Director of Research at the United States Study Centre and joins us now from Sydney. Now, Jared, almost half of Australians polled say Australia needs to stick with its US alliance despite their negative views about the Trump administration. What did the study find?
The study found that Donald Trump is not particularly popular in Australia. So 16% of Australians said that a second Trump administration has been good for Australia. I think it's still, despite the exceedingly high unpopularity of Donald Trump in Australia, remarkable how Australians seem to still appreciate the alliance. As you said, most Australians disagree with withdrawing from the alliance altogether. When we asked 2 years ago if Donald Trump were to be reelected, should Australia withdraw from the alliance with the United States, and 37% wanted to withdraw from the alliance if that happened. 2 years later, we asked again, now that Donald Trump is president, should Australia withdraw from its alliance with the United States? 17% agreed with it. So I think you are seeing Australians, I think, appreciating that they may not like Donald Trump, but they still see the U.S. as an indispensable ally at this point.
And how do views of the US compare with what Australians think of ties with countries in Asia when it comes to being harmful or helpful?
On the whole, I think Australians are pretty worried about the U.S. being more harmful. There's a significant increase in the percentage of Australians that think the U.S. is more harmful. And you can see that the difference in terms of, on the whole, they were thinking it was helpful. And then that difference in terms of who's now thinking it's more harmful is increasing. Decreasing. In that basically Australians are worried about the U.S. in Asia. Australians are worried about the Trump administration and that famous issue, as in all alliances, of being entangled in Donald Trump's foreign policy. With that said, I still think that Australians can appreciate that, as was said in the 2023 Defense Strategic Review, these are some of the worst strategic circumstances in Australia's history. And right now, the U.S., again, is more critical of an ally for Australia than ever.
And an overwhelming 3/4 of those polled are concerned about the future of US democracy, I understand. Has this changed significantly since Donald Trump's second term?
Very much so. I think at the U.S. Study Center, we have a lot of visitors from the U.S., and they are always shocked at how well-versed Australians are in U.S. politics. And I think we not only share the same language, but I think there's a lot of shared cultural understandings of each other as well. And I think the Australians are only eclipsed by Americans in terms of their concern about the democratic processes in the United States. I would note, though, that at the same time, Americans are not exactly optimistic or really championing what's happening in the United States right now. Donald Trump is unpopular in the United States. The majority of Americans disapprove of him. A majority of Americans disapprove of his actions on whether it be immigration and crime or even the economy at this point.
And of course, this is reflected in the latest move by the Pentagon to bar journalists from the building unless they only report information that has been officially authorised by the Department of Defence.
Yeah, that's quite a remarkable development, sort of unprecedented in modern history for that. And especially what I find remarkable is the fact that so much of what has been uncovered about the Pentagon has not been through conversations in hallways, but through Signal, the app, the very app that the Secretary of Defense used to talk about strikes in the Middle East. So it is not the proximity of journalists. But interestingly enough, the Pentagon spokesperson has already started to push back on this, saying that it was not a requirement for the journalists at the Pentagon to sign that. They needed to simply acknowledge it. They basically, in my view, that is backing down, because I imagine that if you look at the White House and how accessible they are to the media, this is not going to last for very long.
And finally, what do Australians think about the AUKUS deal, and do you think this will be brought up with the meeting with Donald Trump?
Yeah, I would be surprised if AUKUS does not come up in that meeting with President Trump. Same with critical minerals and perhaps also the Quad amidst tensions between the United States and India. But in terms of what Australians think of AUKUS, this is probably one of the most interesting takeaways in that only 17% of Australians want to completely abandon AUKUS. 44% want to see it continue, but 39% either didn't know about AUKUS or neither agreed or disagreed about keeping it. So I think that to me tells me that there's a lot more work to be done about explaining the rationale for Australia making the largest defense investment it's made since World War II, and one that will last for generations.
Jared Monshine, really fascinating findings. Thank you.
My pleasure.